Here's your example, or I'm sorry, here is your command to obey. As always, I encourage you to read through the chapter, read through the passage that is assigned for today, and try to find your own before you watch the video. So pause it if you want and try to find your own space. Find a sin or a promise or a command. Try to find one of those. Probably take you 4 to 5 minutes to do that yourself, but you will be greatly helped and benefit. You do that every day, day after day, week after week. Woo! You will have some wonderful lessons from the Lord. But what I got today is that we need to consider God's discipline. We see that at the very early part of our reading is that we should consider the discipline of the Lord your God. Remember that God hates evil, he hates wickedness, and he wants to be done with it. And therefore, that means there are natural consequences embedded in our world system, embedded in the way nature operates, and that there is even supernatural discipline that the Lord does. And I know you have experienced the discipline of the Lord. I have experienced the discipline of the Lord. Um, we are always encountering consequences for our sinful actions, and so we would do well before we do the wrong thing to consider God's discipline and realize, you know what? Why don't we just try to do it the right way this time? And I cannot get over how freezy that is again. So I'm going to take my face off the screen as well. So consider the discipline of the Lord. So consider what he did to Pharaoh. You know, all the great plagues that God sent to Pharaoh and the Egyptians. He says, consider Dathan and Abiram, that great rebellion in the wilderness. Remember, the consequence, the discipline was that the earth itself opened its mouth and swallowed them up because they were rebelling against the leaders, particularly against Aaron and the high priest. So remember what God's discipline is, and remember that to avoid that, you should therefore keep the whole commandment. Keep the whole commandment, 10 commandments. Think about loving God and loving your neighbor. We should do that. And reflecting on the discipline can very well be the means that God uses to stop us from doing silly, may I even say, stupid and foolish things. And then we see this promise, 13 and 14, and this is a mixed bag promise, because this is a true promise. If humanity, if you or I or Israel was indeed able to obey God's commandments completely, then we see that great blessings would come. And in particular, the blessings in covenant with Israel was verse 13, if you will indeed obey my commands that I command you today, to love the Lord your God and to serve him with all your heart and with all your soul. We see the promise is that he will give the rain for your land in its season, the early rain and the latter rain, that you may gather in your grain and your wine and your oil. So if they obey the commandments, man, they're going to get all kinds of blessings. But here's the problem with human beings. We see it even the best person who had not yet fallen into sin. You see, you and I are born with a sinful nature inclined to disobey God. The Israelites were as well, but Adam and Eve had a perfect nature in that respect. They had not yet fallen. They were not born into sin, and yet they even disobeyed God's commandments. So nobody can actually indeed obey God's commandments. And indeed, the promise down here in 16, take care lest your heart be deceived and you turn aside and serve other gods and worship them, then the anger of the Lord will be kindled against you, and he will shut up the heavens so that there will be no rain. Those blessings will not come if you disobey God. Well, here's the problem. We disobey God. So there's no way we can earn in the way that God has set it up. We cannot earn God's blessings because we cannot obey all of God's commands completely. And indeed, verse 17, if you remember, there's this story with the prophet Elijah with one of the Israeli kings. And the prophet Elijah says, there is not going to be any rain on the land. And the prophet Elijah was taking statements from Moses, from God's revealed word earlier in Deuteronomy, right here, and saying, King Ahab, you are not following after the Lord. You are worshiping other gods. And we're told right here that if you turn aside and serve other gods, the anger of the Lord will be kindled against you, and he will shut up the heavens. Well, here you go. It doesn't take a real smart person to realize this. You are going against the Lord, so therefore it's not going to rain. And indeed, there was a great famine on the land because King Ahab, with his wife Jezebel, worshiped false gods and worshiped in particular the god called Baal. So we have here that we need to consider the discipline of the Lord. We need to consider how God responds to sin. And in that way, it can oftentimes be a good blessing to us and can be the means by which God stops us from doing the terrible, silly curse that's coming. And we see, verse 26, that this law, the Ten Commandments that we look at and say are so good, so right, they are actually set before us as a blessing and a curse. And they turn out to be a curse because we find that the law of our members, the law of our flesh, of our sinful nature, desires to disobey God and go against Him. And so, indeed, when it comes to the old covenant, we are cursed because we cannot obey the law. But in the new covenant, in the New Testament, we're told Jesus is going to obey the law perfectly, and we're going to receive the benefits of obeying the law. All these blessings we're going to get because Jesus obeyed it, and then Jesus gets the curses because we disobeyed him. So it's the great switcheroo. Jesus willingly said, I'll obey it completely, and I'll give them the blessings if they trust in me and receive it from me, and I will take the curse of hell and the anger and the judgment of God so that they can be in a good relationship with God. I pray that has been a blessing to you all, and I'll see you in the next video.